Today's video, high contrast, fine art style, black and white building photography. A single image, the photography part and the editing part. I hope you'll enjoy the video. If you do, and you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe before you go. As I said in the intro, today's video I'm having a go at one of these high contrast fine art style building images. Not something I do often because I don't actually have the patience normally to do the kind of editing, the kind of processing that is normally required to make these images work. But in this case, the conditions I was shooting in really led me to think it would actually be a pretty easy edit. We'll have to see when we get on the computer and have a look. It's not something that I'm an expert at by any means, so we'll have to see how it works out. But what we're going to do first of all is start off by heading out on the walk where I found the building and decided to shoot it. So let's start off with that. Today I'm out for a walk. It's a circular walk that will take me through a variety of different types of area. There will be some of it is quite rural, and there's also an industrial park. Yep, an industrial park. Over there, somewhere there, is the industrial park. One of the things I've noticed since I've been living in Spain is that they like to decorate the roundabouts. Sometimes it's plants, trees, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's sculptures and statues, water features. This one is lemons. It looks like if you can view this from above, the roundabout has been covered with a kind of fake grass, like an astroturf, in green and yellow to make the shapes of lemons. Sorry about the noise. And there's actually like a sculpture showing some lemons over there. Nothing I'm going to photograph, but I just thought I'd share it as a matter of interest. But actually the thing that's caught my attention is a building here behind me. Some kind of computer company, but one part of the building is this glassed, curving, it comes around almost to a knife point, and I can't help but think there might be an image to be had of that. But the problem is going to be the position of the sun. So what I'm going to do is try and shoot this building face on. Now the sun is coming in from one side, I've got to keep that out of the frame. It's bouncing off the side of the building, which is why I've put a circular polarizer on, but that means I can't go too wide angle because circular polarizer and very wide angle and blue skies is not a good combination. So I want to shoot at least 15, 16, 17 mil. I need to shoot it perhaps a little bit wider than I want the final image because I might have to adjust for some wide angle distortion. I want to try and keep the cars out. Really difficult to shoot because of the brightness of the sun, but it might really suit one of those kind of very high contrast sort of fine art style black and white edits, because it's very, very contrasty and it's kind of got all the angles and shapes that I think will work for that. Like I say, it would be a lot easier I could see what I was actually shooting. This is working better. I'm using this signpost here to block the sunlight from my eyes. That was how the image was captured. Now it's time to see how I can do the editing. I'm not an expert, I may make mistakes going through. I'm going to try to do it all in Lightroom. So all of the tonal stuff at least in Lightroom. If there's any cloning out to be done, the selection process for cloning and removing stuff in Photoshop is better, so I'll probably use Photoshop for that. And we're going to start off with the raw file and just see what I can do with it. Let's get on the computer and have a look. Here's my raw file straight out of the camera. It's still in colour, and a few things that I'm noticing about this straight away. First of all, it was shot slightly wider than I want the final image to be, and that's because I knew there would be some distortion caused by the relatively wide angle and the position I was shooting from. So for example, if you look at this, the leading edge of the building here, it's leaning over to one side slightly. And of course this lamppost, which won't be in the final image, is leaning in the other way. But if you look at the posts in the foreground, which I'm not sure I want in the final image now that I've seen it, they're pretty straight. So I shot it slightly wider than necessary so that I had room to correct those verticals. I've got quite a bright patch of sky over on the left because the sun was just out of the frame on the left, and I've got a bit of lens flare that's come in here. Maybe there was a spot of dust or something, or a dirty mark on the lens that's just picked that up. That should be easy enough to remove. I've also got a couple of little spots down here which are car headlights reflecting in the building, which again I'm not sure that I want. And there's some aerials up on the building here which don't really add anything. So I think maybe removing some items will have to be done in Photoshop, but for the rest of it I do want to try to do this in Lightroom. So I think what we'll do is start off by converting to black and white, and although I could just click on the black and white button here to convert it, what I'm actually going to do is bring the vibrance and saturation all the way down. And the reason I'm doing that is because what I actually think I want to do is maybe just bring it back up a little bit and add a hint of colour in there, so it's very desaturated, and maybe cool it down a bit by bringing the temperature slider down. I can play around with that later. But already looking at this as a black and white, you can see that that harsh light on the left hand side has done a lot of the contrast work that I want, because the left side of the building is very bright and the right side is very dark. So a lot of that is done, although the leading part, this big glass part of the building here, could do with being a bit brighter, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to straighten the image up by using the transform tool and using the guided uprights. So I've got my first guide and I'm going to draw a line basically down that leading edge of the building like that. And then because you need at least two sliders or two guides, I'm just going to draw one across the bottom because the rest of it looks pretty much level to me. Put that in like that. And then I'm going to crop in, which will take out that lamppost which is off to the side and this bit of the wall here. So I'm going to crop it in. So I'm going to go to a 5:7 crop for this and crop it in about like that, because I really think these posts in the foreground are going to be cloned out in post. Okay, what I want to do now is see about darkening this left hand side of the sky a bit. So I'm going to try doing a select sky and see what that does. And that's done a really nice job of selecting the sky. There's a few bits over here that it hasn't done so well, and down here, and of course on this side of the building there's a few bits, but I'm not worried about this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tidy up this selection here by doing subtract with the brush. Bring the flow fair way up, auto mask turned on, and then I'm just going to bring the flow all the way up, and I'm just going to clean that up. Oops, not quite enough contrast there for the auto mask to work. I'm not too worried if it's got a little bit of an edge on it. Okay, and then I'm going to intersect this mask with a linear gradient, and then to start off with I'm going to bring the exposure back, darkening that left hand side, bring the highlights back, shadows back, blacks. That's darkened that left hand side nicely, but left the right hand side a bit too dark, and that's where my linear gradient comes in, because I'm now going to bring that across like that. So it's only really affecting the left hand side of the frame. And now I can maybe just drop the exposure back a bit more. Okay, this part of the building here, the brightest part, looks pretty good, but I want a little bit more of this left hand side of the full glass part to be visible, to be brighter, and maybe a bit more brightness down on the back part of the building here. So I'm going to do a select subject. Let's see what that does. And again, that's done a pretty good job of selecting the subject. It's selected a bit of the sky around here, probably because of this aerial that's sticking up, and the same here. So I can subtract with a brush. I'm going to turn the auto masking off for this and just brush that out like that. And the same there. Okay, and then I'm going to intersect this with a brush, and then I'm going to bring my exposure up quite a bit, maybe bring the whites up a bit, blacks up a bit, and then using my brush I'm going to be selective about where I apply it. So I'm going to bring the flow down to about 25%, and I'm going to paint in with the brush. Now the brush is only going to have an effect where the original mask was, so I don't have to be too careful with the brush in terms of what I actually paint in. And this is the main bit that I want to bring out, this glass area here with the reflections in. I'll brush that in quite a bit. Maybe down there a little bit. So going over this area a few times at that 25% flow is going to bring out those details quite nicely. Okay, now it's time to do another global change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my whites up. I'm going to hold down my Option key, that'd be the Alt key on a PC, and just drag that up until I get a blown out white there. Then I'm going to pull it back. And that's brightened the whole thing up a bit. Let's just check my blacks. Okay, so I've got a little bit of pure black down the bottom here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull it back a bit more, like that. And then I'm just going to brighten the bottom of the scene a fraction with another linear gradient. So I'm just going to bring it up like that. Maybe just bring the blacks up a fraction there. And the shadows up a fraction there. Still think we could do with perhaps a little bit more brightness in this side of the building, maybe in the building overall. So let's do another select subject. And again, I'm just going to take out the bits that I don't want by selecting, using the brush to remove stuff. So just here and here. And again, intersecting the mask with a brush. Okay, and then we're going to bring the exposure up so that it pops quite a lot more. You can see we're actually starting to blow some highlights in the building there, which I don't really want to do on this one, but we'll deal with that with the brush part of it. Bringing that up like that, and then let me, if I now take the brush, put my opacity, yeah, about 24% again, and then I'm only applying it again where I want it, so I can avoid that bit that's blowing out. And just a case of brushing it in until I get the effect that I want. I do feel this right hand side is looking a bit too dark. And even though I'm trying to apply using this mask, it's not really working. So I think I'm going to have to create a new mask. So select subject again, which is selecting this bit. Intersect the mask with a brush. Bring my exposure up quite a bit. Obviously way too much over on this side. But now I'm just going to apply that just to this side, and that's bringing out some of the reflected clouds and stuff in there. Let's bring the flow up a bit for the purposes of this. I think that's about it for this edit. I'm going to put this into Photoshop just to clone out that lens flare, these aerials, these posts, and those headlight reflections in the glass here, and then let it rest for a few hours and decide if there's anything else I want to do with it. But I think it looks pretty nice actually. Okay, so in the final edit, I left the posts in the foreground and just tweaked the contrast overall a little bit, nothing much else. And well, I'm reasonably happy with it as an attempt at this kind of image. I'm not sure it's something I'll do a lot of, a bit too much post-processing for my taste, to be honest. I prefer to do a lot more in camera and minimal amounts of processing, but it's always fun to try new things. I hope you've enjoyed watching it anyway, and I hope you'll join me for whatever next week brings. I've got no idea what it'll be, but thank you very much for watching this one, and until next week, bye.